What is up, people? I'm Garrett Johnson, and you're listening to Consider Before Consuming, a podcast by Fight the New Drug. Before we jump into today's episode, we want to remind you of two things. One, Fight the New Drug's No Porn November campaign begins this Friday, November 1st. If you're wanting more details about No Porn November, we've linked an article to this episode. And the second thing we want to mention is Rep the Movement Day, which is on November 22nd this year. In regards to Rep the Movement Day, we recently released new merchandise. You can check the new merch by going to ftnd.org/shop. That's ftnd.org/shop. Because one way you can make a difference in the movement is by repping the movement, especially on Rep the Movement Day. So we invite you to pick something up at Fight the New Drug's store, post on social media on November 22nd using hashtag #RepTheMovement. That's hashtag #RepTheMovement. On today's episode, we sit down with Sabrina Parr. Sabrina is a popular health and lifestyle coach in Atlanta, Georgia, and is currently dating two-time NBA champion and a previous guest on this podcast, Lamar. During this conversation, Sabrina opens up about her personal struggle with pornography. She talks about how it negatively impacted her mindset, her habits, and her relationships. She also talked about some of the positive or healthy consequences that occurred once she was able to live a life free from pornography. We also discussed the importance of setting boundaries and the role she's played in helping to empower Lamar to address his personal challenge with pornography. We hope you enjoy this episode of Consider Before Consuming. We want to welcome to the podcast Sabrina Parr. Sabrina, welcome. We are happy to have you today.
Great, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, to give our listeners a little bit of context, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and where we can find you?
Okay, so my name is Sabrina Parr, as he just mentioned. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. I live now in Atlanta, Georgia, and I own a fitness company called Get Up to Par. I am a trainer, life coach / health coach. I'm a mom of two. And as you'll learn in this interview, I am currently dating Lamar Odom. And that's a journey in itself.
For sure.
But no, that's pretty much it. I'm really into self-care, self-love, and I use fitness as a way to deal with stress, anxiety, depression, just any form of adversity in life. And it's worked out really great for me.
I like that. That's cool. So, mom of two, how old are your kids?
They are 6 and 7, a boy and a girl, and they are very hyper. It is a lot.
For sure. I actually have a 6 and a 5-year-old, so I'm right there with you.
So you definitely understand the struggle.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, for sure. Well, to give our audience a little bit more context, kind of where we met and why you're on today is, first of all, we heard of you and Lamar being together because of a TMZ report where you guys were in the airport, and that was the moment that you and him kind of announced that he's working on walking away from pornography and sugar is what he announced, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for us, our mission statement at the Fight the New Drug is to educate individuals on the harmful effects of pornography using science, facts, and personal accounts so that people can make an educated decision regarding pornography. And to hear you and Lamar say that you're ditching porn and sugar, we were excited to hear that because we think that's pretty cool. But yeah, that's how we first heard of you. And then we got to, I was able to meet with you in Manhattan for like 10 minutes, and I got to know you a little bit. One thing that I remember is you said you were a college athlete.
Yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Did you run track? Is that what you did?
Yes, I ran track in college, actually in California, and I did really well with it in Cleveland, Ohio, and just kind of use that as a way out, and a way to Just at that age in high school, I didn't really know what expanding your career was. I just knew
Right.
that I wanted to get out of my current situations. But in hindsight, I now know that's what I was using it for, was to expand my career and, create new opportunities, network, and it's worked greatly for me.
That's really cool. One reason why I was asking, I couldn't remember if it was track. I thought you had said track when we were in New York, but I saw on your Instagram today that you were doing some basketball drills, and I just gotta say,
Yes.
you got some handles.
Yes, I'm quite the athlete.
You
That's
really
kind of
are.
how Lamar and I connected through basketball. But yeah, I just grew up liking to play sports, and more than anything, I was just a competitor. So I remember just really quickly when I was younger, I just was not very good at basketball. And that bothered me because I wanted to be and I wanted to play and I wanted to be impactful. So I just kept doing it, and over time and as the years passed, I learned the game. And I feel like now as an adult, I'm better than I was as a child, when I was a teenager because I'm more mature and I just know, I understand the game now. But I still do play basketball very regularly, just for cardio and stress. And it just keeps me youthful. I have fun. And when I'm out there, I just clear my mind. I don't have to worry about anything. So,
Seriously. Well, I'm being serious. Like when I saw you with those handles, like you have some skill when it comes to basketball. And then a while ago, maybe a month ago, I saw you and Lamar shooting hoops together. Man, you were keeping up with Lamar, it seemed like.
actually, I beat him.
Did you?
So I did. He's down 2-1 to me. Every so often we play a game of horse, and just recently, the first time we played, I won. The second time he won, and I won the last time. So, we just have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, that's healthy.
Yes.
Well, we are excited to talk with you today, Sabrina, because you're a powerful person. You're one of the things that I notice about you is that you're very positive. I feel like you're trying to spread positivity in the world. How did you become a health and life coach?
Okay, so let's see. When I was finishing college in 2008, I was back in Cleveland actually. And, I'm an athlete, so I always had a passion for sports. So that just kind of started my career in personal training.
Right.
So when it came to me having children and my body started changing, this was the first time I was faced with like having to lose weight. Okay. And before that, it was just very natural for me to just look how I looked. So that's when I really got into nutrition and just learning that, food is what changes our bodies, along with some other things, but food is the main thing. And so that started, and then I also had a desire to not work for anyone anymore once I became a mom. So it was kind of the perfect match for me to be an entrepreneur with starting my own nutrition company and being able to stay home with the kids. So I started very small, just making like general food plans for weight loss that I had first used on myself that worked really well. And then it just kind of expanded into like a whole meal prepping company in Cleveland, which I did really well with. And so just recently, over the past year, I transitioned to Atlanta, Georgia, and just really wanted to expand my brand, with still personal training.
And
And
these
so
products are yours. The name of the company is
these,
Get Up to Par.
yes, it is mine.
Cool.
And it was, someone brought it to me many years ago, like just the whole idea of having product.
Right.
And I'm into being all natural. That's one thing. If you visit my page, like I really take pride in just being who I am, looking how I look,
Authenticity.
right, naturally changing the things I can and accepting the things that I cannot change, is what I like to live by.
I
So,
like that.
but my advice to people is always you need to exercise, you need to have self-care because everyone's struggling with something. So like my passion I have my passion because this is what I've used. I went through a lot growing up and exercise, sports, some form of, working out was a way that I was able to cope and deal with things. And I think the world in general is just lacking coping skills. They just don't know how to cope with life. And I have found that using exercise is just a great way to handle life. So just I've always had that passion in that. And so that's how I started the business. And so now I'm always growing. I'm moving into another phase of the business now, and kind of separating the product line from the brand. My separate brand will just be Get Up to Par, which will be more like motivating and
Cool.
blogs and videos, things of that sort. So that's pretty much it. That's where I'm at now
That's
with
really
it.
cool. Well, the name of the podcast, as you know, Sabrina, is Consider Before Consuming, and we like to discuss the harmful effects of pornography and sexual exploitation using only science, facts, and personal accounts. And so, one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on the podcast and have this conversation is because you have a personal account around pornography, around the harmful effects of pornography.
Yes.
Um, and so I just wanted to ask you, when did you become aware, like when was the first time in your life that you became aware of some of the harmful effects of pornography?
When I was married, so I'm divorced now since 2016, and our marriage it was pretty rough. We had a lot of challenges, and a lot of times I just found myself like anytime he was away from the house, just going to watch porn. Like what's the big deal? It doesn't take a lot of time, and
Did,
to make me feel
just to
better.
just to clarify, Sabrina, because I want it for our listeners to have the context. Did you say when he was around, he would go and watch porn, or when he wasn't around, you would watch porn?
When he wasn't around, I would go watch porn.
Okay,
And I think, I was just doing it just to like as a stress reliever, and then sometimes I even convince myself like, oh, I'm grown. What's the harm? At least it's not like another person. It's not cheating. So, but I started noticing that first of all, I'm sneaking. So it's a lie that I'm
right,
creating. And I'm always having to create some type of story or having a feeling of guilt around it when I'm done. And then also, it was desensitizing me. So I was starting to notice that when I would engage and have sex with my ex-husband, it just wouldn't feel the same. Like I would be then craving the feeling I had from when I was watching porn.
right.
And then the more I would watch it, the more I would want a higher high. And so I'm always was trying to go to another level. And then maybe I would add a sex toy, so not only did it just become time consuming, it was like I'm lying to him. He's not pleasing me the same. And now we're arguing over something totally, outside of what the real issues were. So once I was divorced and some time has passed, I told myself, you know what? This is a problem. And so I got rid of my sex toys. So that was like step one. So, and I just knew that was dangerous. And I knew that path could take me down to a dark place that I didn't want to go. I really desired to have healthy relationships. So that was my very first time just really discovering like, porn is dangerous for me.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing that. I think that's very cool. And one of the reason why I say cool, I mean, not that you had to have that challenge, but the fact that you kind of owned it, you had the self-awareness to realize what was happening and kind of navigate away from that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it took some time. I didn't own it initially, but eventually I did.
Right. One of the misconceptions around pornography is that it's only a guy problem, and that's not true.
So
Like
far
faith,
from the truth.
yeah, it's so far from the truth because, yeah, the numbers are showing that a lot of women also watch porn and have challenge with pornography. So we appreciate you
Yeah.
being honest with that because I think a lot of our listeners who maybe feel shame because they're a woman who does have a challenge with pornography, they'll probably look at you and be like, oh, well, she had it. Like, I'm
Yeah.
normal. It's okay.
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
press
We're
forward.
all normal.
Exactly. That's really cool. Well, fast forward, you were 2016, you realize you have this challenge, you want meaningful relationships in your life because going back to like the definition of health, one of the aspects of health is social health, right? And so it's all about relationships. So you started seeking out relationships. Were you dating again? Was it challenging to get back into dating after?
For me, no. I'm a very, like I'm very conscious. So I knew I needed time to heal, which I took. But I wasn't the girl that's like, oh, forget men, I'm divorced and I'm angry. It was just like, okay, that didn't work out. Let's move along. And so I was dating was different for me because it seemed like during the time that I was dating my ex-husband and got divorced, the quality of men had changed.
Really?
And yeah, and I was like, women is putting up with this stuff? Like like what's wrong with these guys?
How long had you been married?
So I was only married 3 years,
So like
but
2013 is kind of when.
I met him in 2012, and then by
Okay.
2016 we were divorced.
So basically from
But
2012 until 2016, when you start dating again, you've noticed a change in men.
not all, the men that I'm speaking of.
Right.
I was a woman. I consider myself successful. I know my worth. I'm very old school. I like chivalry, so it's like going on a date with me is going to be like, okay, what time are you picking me up? Or if I didn't wanted him to know where I lived, it would be like, okay, I'll meet you there. Please be on time.
You're awesome, Sabrina. You're
You know,
smart.
like be on time, plan the whole date out, let me know what time, where place. Like there were some men that just couldn't figure it out. They're like, oh, well, you just pick something. Well, no, that's lazy to me. It just was difficult because that's not what I was used to. And even though my ex-husband and I, we didn't work out, like he was such a gentleman, from day one. Was definitely a planner, always opened the doors, like those things were important to me. And a lot of these guys, they just lacked that. They were lacking that. So it wasn't challenging for me to date because of like my own issues. It was challenging because the quality of men it just wasn't a lot out there that I had met yet. So I just wasn't seeking anyone. I was open to meeting people,
Right.
but I was so busy. I was rebuilding my life. I lost a lot through my divorce, and was fighting custody battles and everything. So just trying to rebuild a brand, relocate, just hold it all together was enough in itself. And I knew it was going to take a very strong, confident man to even accept those things because that's my own baggage that I have. So my plight just became, I'm just going to seek after what's important to me. And at that moment, it was financial stability, relocating, building my brand, like creating a foundation for me and my family. And if a guy fit into that, great. If not, I didn't feel like I was like really missing out on anything.
And as you were transitioning out of your divorce, that's when you stopped looking at pornography, correct?
Yes.
Can you talk to a little bit about like how challenging that was for you?
So honestly, I was put in a situation where I was kind of forced to choose between like morality and just so going through my divorce, I was convicted of a charge and I ended up going to jail. So in 6 months, I was confined. And now, granted, women in jail, they do a lot sexually,
Right.
so it's not like, oh, because I'm in jail, I couldn't masturbate. But obviously, I
Right.
couldn't watch porn.
Right.
But, you can create images in your head and you can still masturbate and, whatever.
Right.
But morally, I was like, okay, I'm already incarcerated. Like, you've got to be kidding me if you think I'm going to be in here focusing on, masturbating in this nasty place. So for 6 months, I did not touch myself at all. And so when I came out of that, I said, you know what, that wasn't as challenging as I thought, to withhold from sex and to not masturbate. And I got so much done
Wow.
during that time. So it was
That's so
like,
cool.
yeah, so it was once I came out of jail that I threw my sex toys away because I was like, I don't even need these. Like, I went 6 months with nothing. And instead of that, like, I became a reader. Before I went to jail, I was not a reader at all, And just my community and just being an athlete, a lot of time they just don't push you to read.
Yeah.
So, but
Did
in jail, I was like, okay, I have to do something in here.
Well, first of all, there's a lot to unpack here. Like you've said
Yeah.
some incredible things. You've had some amazing experiences, and I just got to say that I admire you so much, Sabrina, because you've had some amazing experiences. You've had ups and downs.
Definitely.
You spent time in incarcerated, and
Yeah.
so that like I just think of the quote that nothing ever becomes real until it's experienced, and you've experienced some stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then so I just want to say that I admire you for like I want to hire you as my health coach
Thank you.
because you know how to get through the ups and downs. But going back to your
Yeah.
question or
Yeah.
to your statement of having, as you left the incarceration, you had 6 months without those toys, without pornography, and you said it was pretty. At that point, you felt like it was pretty easy to get over that.
Mm-hmm.
But previously you said you felt you were desensitized and you felt like you needed
Yeah.
more often, a more hardcore version. Do you feel like that 6 month period kind of what's the word? Your mindset went back to a healthier state?
Absolutely. Because the thing is, you don't know you're unhealthy when you're unhealthy. You just don't know. You feel normal. And most people are not talking about it.
Right,
So there's no accountability for it. You're just battling this in your mind.
right,
And you're convincing yourself that this is fine. This is why you do it. So, or you convince yourself that maybe it isn't okay, but you're not strong enough to stop. So, either way, while I was, taking advantage of watching porn and masturbating and using these toys, I didn't really think it was a bad thing, And then I had friends, we kind of all talked about it together. It was like our norm,
right.
you know? And there was like a thing, like a couple of my married friends that had been married before me and longer than me, they were like giving me tips. This is crazy, but it was like there were days, as a woman, our sex drive just may not be as high as a man, and they're in the mood and we're not. So I was taught like, oh, if you watch porn or if you masturbate before, it'll get you in the mood, and then you can kind of get ready for him. So it was a way that we use that for that.
Right.
So, but then it's like manipulation because your husband is thinking you're turned on because of him and you're not, you
Interesting.
know. And so it's like, okay,
And sometimes
you're,
it's okay. It's healthy to not be in the mood sometimes.
yeah, and your partner should understand that, but a lot of times they don't, people can be selfish.
Right.
But as a wife, you're trying to feel that need, is who wants to watch their husband horny and you're not doing anything about it. It's almost like a recipe for disaster. So we kind of just use that as a way to like get up to their level and all very destructive, to be honest. But we didn't know. We're young. We're just trying to figure it out.
Right.
And but yeah, it was definitely desensitizing me because I found myself having sex with him and then afterwards still desiring the porn,
Oh,
still
interesting.
desiring the toy. Like it just wasn't enough.
Interesting. The reality is some women have a stronger sex drive than some men, and so
Yes.
the situation can be reversed. But my question is, do you think that the false expectation of when I'm in the mood, you need to be in the mood too? Do you think that pornography perpetuates that false expectation?
I think so. I think porn just changes your mindset and your expectations on everything. I think porn makes you believe that the people on the screen is how the people in your life are supposed to act and perform. I never really seen, well, I never really got into if it's there, but I never really seen a porn act or skit or whatever it's called where the other person just did not want to have sex.
Right.
I think that would be like rape if they did it anyway. Like
Yeah.
it always came off like, oh, they're equally both wanting to have sex.
Or sometimes in porn, like some scenarios that they'll stage is that the girl or a guy will say no, but that no actually means yes.
Right.
And so then
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway.
So it's just it's really it's just dangerous because you don't know the harms until you get out of it.
Right.
So once I got out of it, I was starting to identify issues in the relationship, issues with my friendships, just more clarity with sex without it.
And you
Just
said you were more productive without it? Like
absolutely.
you
I
were able
mean,
to get
yeah.
more, you were able to accomplish more?
Absolutely. I mean, the downtime that I would have and would typically like try to watch porn or masturbate, I replace that, with reading or journaling or, something productive, you know. And before, I just wouldn't do that. It's really a waste of time. And then depending on what level you're at, it may take you a while to find something that's going to even get you your high.
Right.
Like half the battle was like finding the right video, which
Yeah, because of that.
40 minutes in, you're like, oh my God, I've watched all of this or none of this, so
That is very interesting. That's an interesting observation.
yeah, me and my friends have talked about that. Like sometimes we would come home from going out and we would know we would want to masturbate and like we just fall asleep trying to find the video. Like we just can't find anything because we've either seen it all or nothing just looks compelling to the level we're trying to be on that night,
That's
and
interesting.
that's just dangerous.
Do you think that at some point you were addicted to pornography, or was it just an unhealthy habit?
I think once I knew that it was a problem and it was unhealthy, and then I continued to do it, was an addiction.
Yeah.
Now, I think there's different levels to every addiction. I think I would be naive to say, oh, I wasn't an addiction, an addict. I just think I wasn't a severe case,
Yeah.
but I knew it was affecting my life, at any level, and it was a problem, and I kept doing it,
Yeah.
you
Interesting.
know?
Yeah, well, there's a simple way to kind of define addiction is they call it like the 3 C's, and it's if you crave it, so you spend time seeking it, and if you lose control, so you need more and more often, more hardcore version, and then if you have negative consequences, so the 3 C's. And so that's kind of a simple way, but it sounds like, yeah, it
Yeah,
sounds like that you could have fit that at one point.
yeah, for sure.
But the good news is that we can transition our mindsets back to a healthy state. And so you were in that
Yes.
process through journaling and reading, and it sounds like fitness. Um, so I was just wondering, as you were dating, did any of your relationships as you were dating progress to the point where you talked to that person about pornography? Like maybe they had a challenge and you're like, your expectation was no.
Yes, absolutely.
Even before Lamar?
No, just
Just
Lamar.
Lamar. Okay, yeah. So I knew
Yes.
about Lamar. So interesting. So let's fast forward to that then.
I
How
haven't had many relationships before Lamar. I mean, this
you
is,
were focusing on you.
a 4 year period since I came home 2016. We're now in 2019. So
Right.
there weren't many in between that.
So it was just you focusing on you, your health, your kids, um, and then you met
Yeah.
Lamar.
Yes.
And the for our audience that hasn't listened to Lamar's episode, we were able to meet up with Lamar and Sabrina in New York, and we were able to record a conversation with Lamar Odom, who, if some of you may not know, he's a two-time champion with the LA Lakers, and now he's on Dancing with the Stars and doing lots of cool stuff. And so, how did that progress to the point where you guys that discussion came up about pornography?
Okay. So very early on in the relationship, before Lamar and I were even having sex, like that early. Now we would still spend a lot of time with each other. For weeks and weeks, we were not having sex. We hadn't had sex yet, but I would spend the night with him. And some nights he just wouldn't even try to have sex with me. He would literally grab his phone, watch porn, and masturbate. And I just thought that was very weird,
Would he do that in front of
but
you?
right in front of me, right in the bed with me. He wouldn't hide it. He had no shame of it. It was normal to him. And before I really knew him, I didn't really know how to have that conversation. But I would say, like in my head, I would be like, this doesn't make me feel good. like, but I also knew I was the one withstanding from sex. I
Right.
made that, you know, so I was like, okay, maybe he's just doing this because he knows like it's early. I don't want to have sex yet. You know, I was just really trying to get to know him.
Right.
So once we began having sex and that habit continued, I was like, Lamar, I am laying right here. Like, you didn't even try to see if I wanted to have sex. Like, you're literally reaching for your phone.
Interesting.
And he didn't think anything was wrong with it. And so at first, I just would watch the porn with him to like get into his mode.
Right.
And like, okay, well, whatever. It's not that difficult. I mean, it's not that bad. You know, I'll just watch it with him. Maybe we'll just use this to turn us both on. But it was desensitizing both of us. You know, like he couldn't get pleased. I couldn't get pleased. We're looking more at the screen than we are each other's bodies, you know.
It's
So
like
it's
it's like you're connecting with pixels more than you are with each other.
right. And so
Interesting.
I just didn't feel comfortable with that. And so it became like now we're arguing about it, you know, and now I'm just like, listen, Lamar, I know I am to be desired. If you don't desire me, something's wrong with you. You know, there's nothing wrong with
I
me.
like that.
And he was like, what do you mean? I do desire you. I said, but how? When you're reaching for your phone, you're constantly masturbating. Like it was constant. Like any chance he got, he was masturbating. And I was like, Lamar, it's gonna be impossible for me to get you to ejaculate because you do it so much. You know, like I think there's probably like an allotted amount per day. And I'm like, I think you're over that amount,
Right.
you know, and so he just didn't really understand what I was saying, and I didn't understand what he was going through. So it wasn't until we were in Miami and he decided to go to a sex addict anonymous meeting. He asked if I can go with him, and I went, of course.
That's cool.
And so it was that moment that I discovered Lamar is really a sex addict. While I was listening to everyone share their stories, and you know, a guy in particular pulled him to the side and was very open and transparent about his stories. And one thing that clicked to me, well, two things. The first thing that really helped me understand that we're possibly in trouble is the fact that they mentioned no one compete with pornography. And I was like, that's true. Like, I am not even trying to compete with the porn, but if I wanted to, I'll probably lose because it's so different, it's so intense, you know. And then the second thing was that I lost my train of thought, but
No, it's
in
okay.
the midst of talking, like hearing them, overhearing them, I was like, Lamar is a real sex addict. And I have to figure out what that really means in my relationship. So after that, this was the second thing I realized that when it comes to being a sex addict, there is no morality. You know, a high is a high. You know, it doesn't matter what you're doing to get that high. It's all the same high. And I know that to be true with drug addiction. You know, they go from one thing to the next thing. It's just you know, if you do anything to get that drug. You
Right.
know, so it's the same with sex. It's a drug. You'll do anything to get that drug.
Right.
And I was like, that can get dangerous because if he'll do anything to feel
Yep.
that, I don't know if I'm even willing to be here for that. So we had to have a serious conversation. And I said to him, I said, Lamar, you know, you're a real sex addict. And that's a problem for me because I've never experienced that. I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know if having sex with you is a good idea. I don't know if withholding sex is a good idea. I don't know what to do.
Right.
So I need to get some advice. I need to get some help. And so I called a good friend of mine who's married that I know struggled with sex addiction with his marriage. Thankfully, he made it through and he's still married. But I know he struggled greatly.
Right.
And so I got him on the phone. I preferred a man because I didn't want it to be like an attack of women on Lamar. And so I put him on speaker and I said, hi, you know, I'm here with Lamar. And, you know, we just kind of talked it through. And he was very open and transparent. And then it gave me some skills and resources and knowledge on how to deal with it. But the one thing that really stuck out to me after the conversation was Lamar's willingness to work on it
That's
and
cool.
me not having to push him. But he said to me, he said, Sabrina, you're the first woman that has ever even talked to me about this. Women just deal with it. They just watch me do it. They just watch me engage and they don't say anything.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's just kind of how the problem arose and how we initially began to deal with it.
Interesting.
And I told him, that's a deal breaker for me, Lamar. I'm sorry.
So
I
you set
cannot.
that expectation.
Yeah, very early. Like I said, I know me, it would drive me to be emotionally detached from you.
Right.
As a woman, I need to be desired by the man that I'm with, and I need that to look a certain way. You can say you desire me, and I believe you do, but you're having too many distractions, so you're not being able to actively show me you desire me. And
Right.
so the first thing I said was, the first step was you are not allowed to touch yourself if I am here. That was like the first baby step.
I like that. So it's all about the baby steps.
Yes. And so he said, okay, fine. But I was leery of that because then I thought that meant like I would have to do it for him
Right.
or I would become that new addiction.
Yeah, almost
And
like,
so,
you would replace pornography. That was your concern.
right. And I was like, but you know what? I got to create the boundary anyway. So that was the rule. But then the boundary was you don't then get to use me, you know? So that was tough at first because who knows how long Lamar has been operating like this?
Right.
He naturally would just reach for himself,
Right.
like just not even knowing he's doing it. I'd be like, Lamar, look at your hand.
Right.
And he'd be like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even, so just that. But I was very patient. And then he decided, you know what? This part isn't working. He was like, so how about I just don't watch porn at all?
Oh, wow.
And I said, okay, that would be great. Because the thing was, I wasn't living with him and I wasn't going to babysit him. So he had a lot of time away from me. And I wasn't going to stress out about what he's doing in that time. And so obviously he was struggling while I was gone. He did well while I was there. But, that's really just mornings, nights, whenever we're hanging out with each other.
Right.
And so it got to and then, I would check his phone and he would know I would check his phone. And I would
So
be
that
like,
was
Lamar,
part of it.
yeah, like Lamar, you've been online doing this like all day. And then, and I was like, Lamar, this is draining though. It takes your energy. I'm like, this is why you're tired. Because, all these releases, I mean, it really relaxes you and you don't have the energy to get up and be productive.
Right.
So he was realizing these things saying, you're right. And so when he decided that he wouldn't watch porn at all, that then became, okay, when you leave, take my phone with you. That's the only way I'm going to manage.
So he was increasing his awareness, his self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
That's
yes.
cool.
Yes. And then, so and I'm leaving stuff out, but like we got to that extreme case because I think it was times where I would know he was masturbating when I was gone, like so much that it would upset me when I got back and I would like leave. And I would be like, no, Lamar, I'm not dealing with this. Like you got me messed up. Like I'm not that girl. I don't know who you were dealing with that allowed this, but I'm telling you now, I'm not putting up with it. So if you cannot figure out a way to get a handle of it, I am gone. And I think that at that point, he was like, okay, you're right. This is a problem. Please take my phone when you leave.
Okay.
Just bring it back when you come back, and I was like, okay, this is just a small step. It's extreme, but it's what worked for him.
Yeah.
And at that point, we're very committed in a relationship. He didn't have any issues with women calling his phone or anything like that. So he felt fine with me having his phone. And so we didn't have secrets. So
that's cool.
I think enough time of him just not doing it, because it's hard for him to masturbate without the porn. He needs a visual.
Right.
And then it's hard for him to masturbate without another person there. So I think it just got very, he just kind of stopped desiring it as much. And so now it's just not an issue at all because I think he's like, his palate is now cleaned. But everything, what I've noticed is when you're unhealthy, you're just unhealthy, So like if you're eating unhealthy, if you're drinking, if you're smoking, if you're porn, it's like all supports one another. Like one unhealthy habit supports the next unhealthy habit, right?
Right.
So once he wasn't watching porn and had more energy and was working out in replace of that and drinking more water, his body was just literally cleaning its palate.
That's awesome.
And I watched it happen. And I was like, Lamar, you haven't even desired it in a while. And he was like, oh, you're right.
That's cool. I was actually going to ask that because it's interesting because everyone's journey is different. But I was going to ask you what he replaced that unhealthy habit with. But it sounds like it was exercise, healthy foods, connection with you.
Yeah, he had, it's kind of corny, but like Lamar has a very strong desire for me not to leave him. And but he's been left by a lot of people. Rather they had the right to because he wasn't being a good person, or he's dealt with losses of death. Whatever. Regardless of it, people process things differently. So to him, he processes failed relationships or different things as someone left him.
Yeah.
And that happening to him in this relationship is not a risk he's willing to take.
That's awesome.
And I honor him for that. I'm not bragging. It's like, no, I respect him and I'm patient with him because I know he feels this way.
He's experienced some major traumas in his life that we shouldn't have to deal with, but we do have to deal with it as humans. And I think it sounds like he just really values this meaningful relationship that you guys have created. And so I think that's very admirable, very cool.
Yeah, he does. I wish more people would respect it. It's like, it's healthy for him, and it's not a slap in the face to anyone else. I think everyone did the best job they could with what they knew to do and with the tools they had. He's now almost 40. He's on a different level.
Right.
To compare the Laker Lamar to post NBA Lamar, I mean, he's a totally different man.
Right.
He might have been ready then. He really wasn't ready when I met him, but he had a willingness to save a relationship. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Sabrina, we think you're real cool. We think you're awesome. We think
Thank you.
that might sound cheesy, but the reality is like you're cool. You're doing good things in the world, and we love to follow what you're doing. And it sounds like you guys are on a healthy path, and we are so happy for you and him. One question I did have, Sabrina, is regarding your kids, because your kids are really young, 6 and 7 years old. Mm-hmm. At what point will you start talking to your kids about the harmful effects of pornography? Do you know?
I think as soon as they get a cell phone, they don't have phones yet.
Yeah.
And I think as soon as I allow them to have a phone, that is when I'll start talking about images of sex, videos of sex, how does it make you feel, what are you going to do if you come across it, Now, obviously I'm going to put blocks on their phones, but I'm not afraid of those conversations at all.
That's awesome.
I wish I would have started with my niece a little earlier. I think I started when she was 10 and that was too late.
Interesting.
Just the conversation of sex,
Right.
But I don't know. This is the thing. You never know what'll trigger you to want to watch porn. Everyone's trigger is different, right? So I just want to hit it, as early as I can because sadness may be the trigger. Hunger, I don't know,
Anger, hunger, stress, anxiety, depression.
For me,
escapism.
Right. For me, it was an escape. For Lamar, it's an escape. So very early because I've been through so much, I want to try to avoid as much as possible with my children.
Right.
And I think the more knowledge they have on things, the more they can make a conscious decision to avoid it.
Exactly.
Instead of trying to deal with it once it's an issue.
The more knowledge and truth they have, it's going to make them more competent, right? To navigate life. So I like
absolutely.
That.
And cool. I always, anytime I do an interview or speak in general, I always want people to feel like there's something tangible they can take away from what I'm saying. So to women in particular, I just want to give them this because I want people to feel like what I attained with Lamar is attainable. Like, I don't think we're a rare case.
Right.
We're not. Like, what we did is not like magical and it's like, oh wow, that's great. But here I am struggling. I can't get my guy to do anything.
Right.
It is attainable. It starts with you though. It starts with you creating a boundary and really putting your foot down. If you are not okay with something, just don't accept it. It's really that simple. If they love you and value the relationship, they will navigate around that boundary. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
It's the consistent allowing of it is what makes it so bad, because if you're just kind of like, oh, what's their issue? And I'm just going to wait until they get better at it, or however they're choosing to deal with it. Like, if you know your worth and what you really like and you say, no, this is a no-go for me, and you stick to that, more women will see that more men are more prone to saying, okay, well, I can't do this because she doesn't like it and I like her and I want to be a part of her life, so I have to remove this.
I like that.
So that is just the one thing that I want women to become more aware of.
That's amazing advice. Setting the expectation. Boundaries are healthy. Open communication is healthy. That's great advice.
Yes. And I look at it like think of it as, when we're driving and we come to like those little orange block things or whatever that tell us we can't go that way.
Right.
A barrier.
Barricades.
Right. So, okay, I can't go this way because that's a boundary, a barrier. But I can go another way to still get to that, right? It's the same. That's the same thing in life with us. To get to me, you can't come through this way. Like, you can't have access to me if you're trying to watch porn. That's the road that you see. But I block that road.
Ooh, I
so
like that.
You have to go around. I'm not gone. I'm not unattainable. It's not like you have to stare at me and gaze like, oh, it would be great to get over there. It's just like you have to find another way.
Right.
And the other way is the safe way for me. It's the healthy way for me. It's the best route to me. So, and that is just how I live all my relationships, and people, women more so than anyone, but people in general need to learn that, create the way to you.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, okay, well, here, I'm open. And then when you get here, you're agitated because of what they bring.
Right.
Because think about the barriers. There's going to be a lot of gravel. Who knows what kind of construction's going on. You're going to bring all that mess to me.
Right.
Dirt and sand and rocks and noise. And, that's why they don't want you to go that way.
Yeah.
The smooth road is over here, so
Ooh,
just a great analogy to use, in being in a relationship or starting new ones.
I love it.
Thank you.
You are awesome. Sabrina, you guys recently announced you guys are going to have a television show, correct?
Yes, we are. We're really excited because we talk a lot about this on our show.
Cool. Are you able to talk to that a little bit, when it's going to air?
So we don't know exactly the dates yet.
Okay.
That all depends on editors and, they kind of have their vision of putting stuff together. But it will be very sooner, probably sometime this year for sure. And we're really excited though. We can't say what network yet.
Okay.
Until they start actually releasing like teasers and commercials or however that works.
Right.
But very close. So I'm
exciting.
excited to get the content out there. Yeah.
That's very exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you. This is really good. This is really good for us.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's good for the world too, Sabrina. And once again, returning kind of like what I said at the very first is, when I had that opportunity to meet you in Manhattan, I felt like you're a very positive person, and this conversation is no different. You're just spreading positivity and spreading knowledge, and at the same time setting boundaries and helping other people. So anyway, I just want to say thank you.
Well, you are very welcome, and thank you for having me on the podcast and allowing me to share my story, a piece of my story.
Yeah, absolutely. It was our pleasure. Well, we will send you and Lamar some more merchandise.
Great. Looking forward to that. I literally have my Porn Kills Love shirt on now.
Do you? That's awesome.
No, Lamar and I both wore them today. We didn't do it on purpose. We just, when you just go out the house, you just grab something to throw on. Like, these are like our favorite grab and go shirts. So.
I love it. That's cool. We'll send you some more. And let us know if we can do anything for you guys. We're always going to support you guys. So, yeah.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And I love the movement that you have, and everything that you stand for is awesome.
Great. Well, we appreciate the support. It means a lot, and you're making a difference. So. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Consider Before Consuming. Consider Before Consuming is brought to you by Fight the New Drug. Fight the New Drug is a non-religious, non-legislative organization that exists to provide individuals the opportunity to make an informed decision regarding pornography by raising awareness on its harmful effects using only science, facts, and personal accounts. Like we mentioned at the beginning of this episode, No Porn November begins this Friday, November 1st. We invite you, if you haven't already, to give up porn for the month of November. If you're looking for tips and or motivation for No Porn November, check the links attached to this episode and follow Fight the New Drug on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube.